It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
As a young man, and even now as a dangerously close to 50-year-old guy, my degree of interest in sensation-seeking activities is massively higher than yours. Now, obviously, we're talking about a sample size of one, but you don't want to do the crazy stuff that I want to do.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
All right, so we're rolling. Are you ready? Let's do this.
Do we really have to do Doctor's Desk?
I don't know why you don't like this. It is literally the best podcast episode that we do every month.
You just need to say the name of the first journal article.
Yeah.
And you put me to sleep.
Oh, come on. Don't be like, okay, so we probably should do the intro. I'm Dr. Justin Coulson. You're Kylie, Mrs.
Are you
Happy
recording?
Families. Yeah, I am. And I'm just going to leave it here because that was very, very funny. And now everyone knows exactly how you feel about the podcast episode we're about to do today. This is literally the best podcast episode we do each month. And folks, this is what I have to deal with every single month when we start to do this.
Maybe you just need another doctor sitting in the chair.
I'm going to read, as you've requested, the title of the two journal articles that we're going to be emphasising in today's Doctor's Desk podcast. If you're new to the podcast, once a month, I pull out a couple of articles that are relevant to research that I'm doing for a book or an article or just parenting generally, stuff that I've come across that I think is so interesting that I have to share it with you on the podcast and talk about it. And the first article that we're going to talk about today comes from Lawrence Steinberg, literally the world's leading authority on adolescence. Such a great article. The article is called Sex Differences in the Developmental Trajectories of Impulse Control and Sensation Seeking from Early Adolescence to Early Adulthood. It was published in the Journal of Youth and Adolescence.
Is he trying to make up his word count?
No, there's no word count. I think this is
Do you remember when you were in high school and you had to write a 500-word essay and you'd add a whole heap of unnecessary words into your text just to make up the word count?
I don't have
Is
to
that
do
what
that
they're
anymore.
trying to do?
No.
Why do they make it so long?
Well, have a listen to the title of the second one that we're going to do. Antecedents of empathic capacity, emotion regulation styles as mediators between controlling versus autonomy supportive maternal practices and empathy.
This is so boring.
Who talks like this?
I miss academia. I really do. I love it.
Do you ever hear anyone use those words in a normal day-to-day conversation?
This is who you've married.
Oh my God.
So can we talk about them now that everyone knows where we're going? See, now that I've done that, people are probably switching the podcast off and just going, yeah, no, not for me today. These are really important studies, okay? If you have boys, the first study really matters a lot. And if you have children who you would like to have see more empathy in, the second study is enormously important, okay? There's so much
let's
here.
go. Come on. Shoot me now.
I love you. All right, here we go. So the first article from Steinberg, Schulman, also Harden and Chin, Journal of Youth and Adolescence. I'm just going to read a couple of lines out of the abstract and let's pull a couple of things out of it. This one is super important. So first of all, some context. We're looking at how males and females, and we're talking here about natal males and natal females, that is born male, born female, how they develop their impulse control and their sensation seeking. So these are two separate ideas. Impulse control, I want to do that, but I'm able to control it. It's like inhibition, regulation. Okay.
So stereotypically, when you say those words, I think of boys.
Yes, and rightly so. And the research would definitely bear that out. It's stereotypical, but it's true. Now, distributions overlap. There are a lot of girls that struggle with impulse control, but only the majority of them don't, relative to boys the same age. In fact, there's some incredible data in this study that's going to blow your mind. I'll come to that in a sec. Blow your mind. So impulse control develops differently to sensation seeking. They have different trajectories. Let me ask you, even before I dive into the article, what would you anticipate would be the trajectory of impulse control? For males, females, both, either, neither, whatever you like. How does impulse control develop?
I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but I would suggest that girls develop impulse control a lot earlier than boys do.
Definitely. And we're going to get to some incredible data shortly on that.
And then you know, we've had conversations in the past, you add alcohol to the equation and...
Okay, so we're not going to get into that in today's podcast. That's adding a level of complexity that goes beyond what this research was about. But so you're identifying that in terms of the trajectory of impulse control development, girls develop earlier than boys.
Yeah.
Would you say that it continues to just grow step by step by step? Does it go up and down and fluctuate, or is it a fairly steady rise in impulse control as kids grow?
I don't really know the answer to that. I think girls in general are actually more people pleasers, which is why their impulse control actually lessens earlier on.
Okay, all right. What about sensation seeking? Who seeks sensation more, boys or girls?
Boys.
Yeah, okay. So decades of research would support that. Once again, does sensation seeking just keep on going up as we get older? Is it incrementally up and down, roller coaster ride? What would you anticipate?
I think that as you mature, generally speaking, that sensation seeking would lessen over time. But I think it's a maturity thing.
Okay, we're going to talk about what the data shows in just a sec. Let me tell you about this study. So essentially, what Schulman, Steinberg and colleagues have said is that it's been proposed that we see high rates of risk-taking in adolescence, partly because of the neurobiological development that's going on. It's a brain development issue, right? And as your brain develops more, you become less inclined to seek sensations. That's the overall general proposal. Now, there's some really clever research that highlights that there are some big holes, some big flaws with that argument, but that's what most people will fall back on as a stereotype. That's what they'll accept. And as a result of the lack of neurobiological development, kids are more likely to seek sensations and also have lower impulse control. Impulse control is still developing then, okay? What these researchers were trying to do is get access to really good data showing whether the pattern's the same for boys and girls, males and females. And so they got a really good sized number, 8,500 people into this study. And what they essentially found was that sensation seeking rises and falls. It goes up and then it drops off, as you said, with maturity. Impulse control continues to increase into the 20s. What they found, though, as you've also highlighted, is that males exhibit higher levels of sensation seeking and also lower levels of impulse control.
Do they know why? Compared
to females. We think that yes, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, females start puberty earlier. Females are more neurologically mature. Like, we know that by the time they're about 18, girls are as much as 2 years more neurologically advanced. There's also some socialization stuff going on, but I think it goes into there's a whole lot more happening. Things like testosterone. This is the hormone that genuinely dominates and divides males from females. It's such an important hormone. So there's hormones, there's brain development. This is a really highly vulnerable time, and it seems as though risk-taking during adolescence is greater in magnitude and also lasts for a whole lot longer in boys than girls.
So tell me, what age is impulse control at its lowest?
What's, I think, really fascinating about this research is when we look at both males and females together, impulse control drops from the age of 10 through until around about the age of 14 and 15. Okay, when we look at the entire population together. And then it increases slowly back up until the age of 25, where it's at its highest in this study. I would imagine it continues to increase even after the age of 25, but that wasn't researched. What's fascinating to me, though, is the difference between males and females on impulse control. Get this.
Are you about to blow my mind?
I'm about to blow your mind. I'm looking right now at the female grid and comparing it to the male. And what it shows, Kylie, is that a 25-year-old male exhibits the same level of impulse control as a 10-year-old female. I'm not kidding. I'm legit. Look at you. This is fair income.
It explains so much.
Okay, so to put this into context, that 25-year-old male is showing a slightly higher level of impulse control than a 14 or 15-year-old female, because remember I said impulse control drops for both males and females from the age of 10 down to about 14, 15. But here's the fascinating thing. For females, their impulse control drops quite substantially from 10 through to 14, 15. For males, it drops like an itty bitty teeny bit because it's already so darn low. It's like we've got this floor effect. Like you can't get much lower, boys, but from the age of 10, but it does drop just marginally from 10 to 15, whereas girls, there's a really defined drop from 10 through to 15. But then the girls escalate back up again really, really fast. It's a short window. I'm going to say that the window where girls are the lowest is really from about the age of 12 to 15. That's their lowest window. And then poof, all of a sudden they're good again. Whereas the boys, they're already super low at the age of 10. They drop a little more until they're about 14 or 15. And then ever so slowly they climb back up until at the age of 25, their impulse control is where girls were at 10.
Wow.
Did that blow your mind?
Does it keep getting better?
Well, we don't know, but as I said before, my guess would be, because we don't have the data in this particular paper, my guess would be that impulse control continues to get better. But I mean, let's face it, you and I are in our 40s now, and while we have pretty good impulse control, if the cake's in the fridge, you're going to eat it. And if the icing's on the cake...
Who's going to eat it?
And if the icing's on the cake, I'm going to lick it all off. And... obviously, impulse control changes depending on how tired we are and how hungry we are and what our goals are and our values and so on. So I think that it does get better as we get older. But the critical thing here is that boys and impulse control just super, super, super low relative to females.
So what about sensation seeking? Because you obviously suggested that they're on different trajectories.
They are. And what we find with sensation seeking for both girls and boys is that sensation seeking is at its lowest. That is, lowest level of let me do crazy stuff, once again around the age of 10 or 11. And we see a really steady climb in sensation seeking until around about the age of 14. And that's where for girls, it pretty much levels off. When I say levels off, it stays at that level from 14 through until around about the age of 18. Somewhere in there. And then it declines pretty rapidly until at the age of 25, it's back where sensation seeking was at the age of 12 for females. But when we look at it for boys, they're already much higher than the girls anyway, but they accelerate super fast from 10 through to 14, but then they keep on accelerating. It eases off a little bit to 16, 17, and then it spikes again around about 18, 19, and then it pretty much stays there until they're 24, and then it drops off a little bit. So, I mean, this is a controversial topic, and especially with the way the world is right now, and this idea that there's a blue brain and a pink brain. Oh, hang on, no, there's not. It's delusions of gender. There are all of these things that are being spoken about and written about in terms of gender and sex differences. From a responsible science perspective, it's undeniable that boys and girls differ. Obviously, there is a continuum, and there are some boys who are very, very low on sensation seeking and super great with impulse control, but they are in the exception. Those distributions overlap only on the extremes. They are different. There are real differences there, and I find this data from Steinberg and Schulman so compelling when you look at the way they've done the study and look at what they've reported. It's just such a compelling thing, and I look at it and I think to myself, as a young man, and even now as a dangerously close to 50-year-old guy, my degree of interest in sensation-seeking activities is massively higher than yours. Now, obviously, we're talking about a sample size of one, but you don't want to do the crazy stuff that I want to do.
Hey, I went riverboarding.
Yeah, you did. You did.
But that wasn't thrill-seeking enough for you.
I really wanted to do the bungee swing, and I love to surf big waves, and I love to ride my bike fast down hills, and do you know what I mean? There's that sensation-seeking element that I think is just so profoundly different between males and females on average.
Well, look, you blew my mind so much that we don't have time for the second.
No, we have to do it, but we're going to do it really, really quick. Okay, this is in 3 minutes or less.
Oh, wow. Well, after the title you shared with me, I think you've used your 3 minutes up.
All right, so this one was about empathy. It's by an Israeli researcher called Guy Roth, who is one of my favourite researchers in the entire whole wide world. And what they've basically done is they've got a whole bunch of kids, 147 college students. They've also brought them together with their close friends. And they've said, we want to get you to fill in this survey. So the college students have filled in a survey all about the way their mums behave with them and the way they regulate their emotions, both individually and together. And then they've asked the friends, what sort of empathy and sympathy do you get from our participant over here who's just filled in that survey? What are they like when you're having an emotional moment? And what they've basically found is this. When kids perceive their parents as being empathic, willing to take their perspective, and then, autonomy supportive, choice providing, when they say, wow, it looks like you're having a tough time, what do you think you need to do here? How can I support you? Those kids end up being reported by their friends to be vastly more empathic, wonderfully sympathetic, absolutely willing to engage with their friend and their difficulties with lots of caring and lots of concern. Like they really emotionally step into the space and they're there to support them. Whereas the kids who are raised in homes where the parents are emotionally, distant, they don't take their child's perspective. They just tell them to suck it up. You'll be right. Stop being a big sook. Come on, get on with it. You're being ridiculous now. Calm down. Stop it. Whatever. And often tell the kids what to do. What Guy Roth and his associates in this study found is that those people were reported as being much more emotionally distressed when their friend was experiencing an emotional reaction. And so they were more aversively engaged emotionally. They were more self-centered with their emotions. They'd be saying things like, I can't believe you're doing this to me. Or like it was just a lack of empathy. They didn't know how, they were emotionally stunted, I guess is what I'm saying here. So
would that be the same case for parents who are more just apathetic? Like it's not even a, suck it up princess kind of thing. It's just I've got other things that are more important.
It would be. And I think there's a couple of things going on here. Number one, there's modelling, right? So when you've got a parent who takes your perspective and then says, well, I want to give you some choices here. What do you think you should do? How are we going to work this out? They're modelling empathy and they're modelling what it means to support another person's psychological needs. Whereas if you've got an apathetic parent or even a parent who's pushing against the child and saying, come on, you're being ridiculous, stop it now, you've cried long enough, get on with it. When you've got that going on, what you're showing is obviously unhelpful modelling, but more than that, you're placing the relationship on a lower rung than your own personal comfort with emotions. You're elevating your need to be comfortable over the other person's emotional distress. You're also suggesting to them that they're not competent in managing their emotions. You're indicating that they're incapable and incompetent. And thirdly, you're taking away their sense of agency and control because you're telling them what to feel and how to feel it and getting mad at them for not feeling it the way you want them to feel it right now, right here, sort of thing. So my new book, I'm going to put in a plug for the new book, The Parenting Revolution. It's out right now. That's that's precisely what Guy Roth and his associates have discovered here. If you can be a need-supportive parent, which is what the Parenting Revolution is actually all about, you teach your kids how to be much more empathic. You teach them how to be good friends. You teach them that stuff because you're modelling it, partly, but also because you're supporting their needs.
Well, I'm not quite sure we made it in 3 minutes.
No, we did. Seriously. Like I did. Okay, really, really close. So we will link. We need to wrap up. Do you have any questions about those studies? Would you like to ask the professor anything about the science we've talked about today?
No, I think we've talked about it enough. Thank you.
You got intrigued. You actually got intrigued. You liked this podcast episode.
You blew my mind, honey. You blew my mind.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer, and he reckons that this is a monthly staple that needs to stay. You're the only one. You're the only one. We'll link to the studies that I've shared in the show notes in case you'd like to look them up and find more information about them. They really are fascinating. And thank you so much.
Just make sure you've got your PhD handy so you can understand it.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with I'll Do Better Tomorrow on the Happy Families podcast.